You need winners? Let the Football Insiders show you how to make money. General Manager Al DeMarco, a former sports reporter and contributor on Fox Sports, MSNBC, and Comcast Sports TV, brings over 25 years of handicapping experience to the table. CEO Steve Budin, the author of Bets, Drugs, and Rock and Roll, is the man responsible for creating the sports betting industry. Together, they are the Football Insiders, your number one source for football winners.
Well, after 2 straight weeks where the underdogs had their way with bettors in Vegas, the favorites roared back in week number 8, going 8-4-1 against the spread, proving once more that everything in gambling is cyclical. Hi everyone, Al DeMarco here, and joining me as he has each and every weekend for the past 10 years, Steve Budin in Miami, and this is the Countdown to Kickoff show. And we are the Football Insiders, and this show is the only nationally televised pregame show to break down your top games from a point spread perspective. And Steve, listen, the running commentary this NFL season has been how NFL viewership is down. But I find the most interesting thing is that there is also something else that is even bigger, and it goes hand in hand with viewership being down. The numbers are out for the month of September in Vegas, and year-to-year comparisons, $6 million decrease in the state of Nevada in pro and college football gambling this September versus last September.
Well, as a former bookmaker, it's alarming. As a football fan, it's alarming. As a handicapper, it's alarming. But let me tell you something, Al. This has nothing to do with Colin Kaepernick taking a knee. That's the bullshit that the league wants to feed you, but it's got nothing to do with that. This has got everything to do with a bad start to the season, having your leading man, Tom Brady, sit out the first 4 weeks. This has everything to do with every kid across the country staring at their computer and watching their stats compile for their fantasy football, which has completely destroyed the game in every single way. And they're not watching the television anymore. They're watching their computer, and they're not watching the game on the computer. They're watching a grid. I've seen my son do it with their fictitious team against all their friends and watching the points tally to know who's in first place and who's in second place between them and their friends. That's where their focus is. It has to do with parity in the league. It has to do with a lot of crappy teams and crappy games during prime time. It's like a shitstorm hitting all at once, Al, and we're seeing 35% viewership down in some cases.
And listen, the gambling in Vegas, we know that most of the people probably watching this show, they're not running up and down the strip and betting at the Wynn and running over to the Bellagio to place their bets. No, they're playing offshore. And so if the numbers in Vegas are down by that same percentage, they are down offshore as well. And they are going to continue to be down. Now, let's not feel too sorry for the Vegas sports books, because they still made a record number in terms of profit in the month of September, because it was a tough month to make money. Listen, as a handicapper, I know that for a damn fact. But the fact is still that when viewership is down, gambling is down. Gambling is good for football, whether or not the leagues will admit it or not, and vice versa. But you're right. Listen, fantasy is giving people that vicarious thrill. It's giving them that thrill that they are desiring, just like gambling does. And the strangest part about it is that the odds are astronomical. You might as well go to your local 7-Eleven and buy a lottery ticket. You might as well be like my wife, who, granted, and I say this with all types of loving respect, especially since she may be watching this show, she's a video poker addict. But the odds of her winning are just as good as people winning in fantasy, where what we do, wagering on games, it's a 50-50 proposition. But you're right. All those other influences definitely has affected the way people are not wagering on games. And in terms of the quality, the product on the field, it's subpar. You've got one team that's outstanding, the Patriots. Who else? Every other team out there is flawed. Even the teams that have 5 or 6 wins.
Maybe Dallas is a fun team to watch at this stage, but they're nothing close to the Patriots.
Exactly. The Broncos are a flawed team. Seattle, a flawed team. Green Bay, a flawed team. And I also think that every single season, you got to have the hero team. You got to have the team with the villain. I go back to like the NBA as an example. Last year, you had the fun team, the team that everybody loved. You had the Golden State Warriors, and then you had LeBron and the Cavaliers, the team that everybody loved to hate.
Right.
You have to have the villain and the hero. You don't have that in the NFL this year. Eli's gone. You don't have as many stars to root for either. So the NFL has a real problem. And personally, I think we've seen in our business model, college football is much bigger than the NFL right now. So with that being said, let's turn to our first game here on the card. We have a team in the New York Giants that's coming off a bye, taking on a Philadelphia team that had a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter at Dallas on Sunday night, ended up blowing the game, losing in overtime to the Cowboys, finding themselves second straight week on the road. Giants, surprisingly to me, are the favorite in this game. I understand why, because they're the home field team. But the Giants, they have an okay record, but they certainly haven't played okay on the field this year.
No, I agree, Al. Look, I'm going to try to give you an authentic Philadelphia breakdown here. Eli Manning reminds me of Rocky Balboa in Rocky VI. And not the way he was a tough old man who defied the odds, Al, but how by that time and that stage of our lives, we had just about enough of Rocky Balboa. 8 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Yo, Adrian, these are like Tim Tebow numbers. Look out, the last outing for Eli Manning. If that was any indicator of his Halloween costume, he probably went out as Casper the Friendly Ghost. 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Let's face it, the guy was freaking invisible. Besides, look, it's all about matchups, Al. The Giants, they rely too heavily on the pass, while the Eagles, they've got a top 5 pass defense. That's going to spell trouble for the Giants all day long. And look, I admit it. The last time I liked the Eagles on the road, Glenn Fry was the quarterback. But I'll take the Eagles plus the points in this one to get the money.
Giants have been idle since that 17-10 win in London against the Rams in that game. They only had 232 yards in total offense. They only ran for 32 yards, and that has been the problem all season long. They absolutely have been unable to run the ball. 4 for 13 first downs in that game against the Rams. They only won because St. Louis quarterback Case Keenum threw 4 interceptions, practically gift-wrapped that game. The week prior, they beat the Baltimore Ravens at home at MetLife Stadium. In that game, they were 4 for 15 on third down opportunities. I go back to the Eagles game 2 weeks ago in Philadelphia against the Vikings. They were playing a Minnesota team that had offensive line problems, that had no ground game. They teed off all game long against Sam Bradford, hit him 19 times, sacked him 6 times. They weren't able to do that against the Cowboys and Dak Prescott. Prescott being very elusive, having mobility, having a ground game with Zeke Elliott to rely on. And I go back to the Vikings game and I see a similar defensive scheme that's going to give Eli Manning problems here. This has also been a one-sided series as the Eagles have won and covered 4 straight in this series by big margins. They've covered 5 of the last 6, and I think they have taken the last 3 at MetLife Stadium. I'm going to go with Philadelphia here, laying 2.5 to 3 points. And again, if this line is around 3 or 4 points, I am buying that half point down on Philadelphia. Next game, Dallas. Minus 7.5 to 8 points at Cleveland. Now, this is one of those games that you always have to be so leery about because it is a classic letdown situation for the Cowboys. Coming back from the 10-point rally in the fourth quarter to win in overtime, getting the cover at home against Philadelphia. Could this be a trap game for Dallas bettors? And we have been riding the Cowboys for the last 6 weeks, and they have been a steady paycheck casher in Vegas for us here on the show.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, Al, but I'm not going to try to be a market timer at this point. 7 times the Cowboys have played so far this season. 7 times we've told everybody to bet the Cowboys, and they've covered 6 out of 7 times. I don't see any reason to change our tune at this point in the week. Look, Al, the Browns, they remind me of that old joke. What does Taylor Swift and a doorknob have in common? You got it. Everybody gets their turn. Well, now it's the Cowboys' turn to spank that ass. And fresh off a reality check last week, the Cowboys, Al, they're going to do just that. They're going to spank that ass like a baby at a christening. So give me the boys here and do yourself a favor. You're going to like this. Call Geico up on the phone. Get that insurance plan just in case. Buy it down to 7 points. Let's go with the Cowboys lay 7 off the buy down.
By my count, that is the third time this season you have taken a violent swipe at Taylor. What did Tay-Tay ever do to you?
The girl's got a different boyfriend every week. Come on, you know it.
Man.
Maybe
brutal.
I'm just mad it's not me.
I somehow this show continues to veer into TMZ territory. I'm not too sure how. Okay, listen, again, Taylor, I just want to apologize to the Taylor Swift fans out there, all 2.5 of them. Zeke Elliott back in Ohio, where, of course, he started in Columbus for the Buckeyes. Listen, only 22 carries for 96 yards against the Eagles after running for 130-plus in his prior 4 games. He's going to be taking on a Cleveland defense that is number 31. In the NFL, it's stopping the run. There's only 32 teams here, guys. You know where I'm going with this one. Browns allowing 143.8 yards a game, 4.8 yards a carry. They coughed up a 20-7 halftime lead against your Jets, Steve, your Jets. We'll get to them later. And then managed to lose that game 31-28. The thing with the Browns, I was doing a radio interview last week, and somebody said, hey, are the Browns going to lose every single game this season? No, because sooner or later, the game that you least expected, they're going to just pop up and surprisingly pull a huge shocker. Is it going to be this week? No. But this is one of those games. Listen, if you're going to bet it, you have to lay the points with the Cowboys. But this is one of those games I would not touch. I would stay away with this one. It's just one of those ugly games that you should just skip and go to the next one on the board. Of course, that next one on the board is your Jets. They are visiting Miami, where the Dolphins, I think, are a damn cheap price, -3.5, especially since they're coming off consecutive upsets against the Steelers and the, who else did they beat? The Buffalo Bills, thanks to the great running performances by Jay Ajayi, who had back-to-back 200-yard-plus games on the ground for Miami to power the offense.
No, look, you said the Jets were my team, and maybe I know them better than anyone else. And now going into this season, they were supposed to be, they were billed as a defensive team, a tough defensive team. And I told you on the show from day one, right here, that they were frauds, and you agreed with me. And look, their defense is led by the $17 million man, Darrelle Revis. Well, let me tell you something, Al. Darrelle Revis and the Jets defense were more exposed last week than Anthony Weiner. Somebody call Finn from SVU because Revis was flat out abused by the Browns last week, Al. The Browns. So now they head to Miami, where at least 25% of the stadium is going to be Jet fans. And make no mistake about it, I live in this town. I know it. I can sense it. For the Dolphins, Al, this is like the Super Bowl. They beat the Bills last week, a team named after my ex-wife, so that made me happy. But all kidding aside, they've had 2 impressive wins. You mentioned them now, back-to-back, Steelers and the Bills over the last 2 weeks. Look, if Fitzpatrick was a horse, they would shoot him. Tannehill versus this Jets pass defense that ranks last in the league is going to look like Dan Marino in the old days. It's a fact, Al. This game used to be a big rivalry. It used to be an important game. Not anymore. But here's another fact. We know it as gamblers. If you bet enough money on the game, it could feel like the Super Bowl. If this is that game for you, I would bet the Dolphins.
I agree with you. I think Miami is to play in this game. Listen, 58 points the last 2 games and the upsets that we talked about of the Steelers and the Bills. And because Ajayi has powered the ground game, we have seen less reliance on Tannehill constantly having to put the ball up 35 to 40 times, where he is a liability. And yes, the Jets come in here with the number 32 pass defense and the number 1 rushing defense. But those numbers are so skewed because it's so easy to throw on the Jets. Nobody runs on them. That's why they have the number one run defense. I say that number one ranking is also shown to be fraudulent here. I think Miami is a cheap chalk price. I think the Jets, any team that is trailing Cleveland 20-7 and has to rally for a 31-28 win, is a fraud, as you have maintained all season long. Miami minus the 3.5 points. I would go ahead and buy down the half point in this one if this line is anywhere between 3 and 4.5, and ride the fish in this one. Hey, we're going to take a quick break, and when we return, we'll break down 4 more games for this Sunday card here on the Countdown to Kickoff show. 4.5 years ago, I created the Charity Play of the Week program, and in that time, you and I have created a community of caregivers and have combined to contribute well over $350,000 to people in times of need. For those of you that have joined me, my thanks. For those of you that are not aware of the Charity Play of the Week program, let me just remind you, once a week, I give one of the top plays from one of the handicappers away here at the site for free, no strings attached. If it wins, then on a quid pro quo basis, I ask you to make a donation to a charity recipient that I choose on a weekly basis. I don't care if it's $1, $5, or $50. You don't have to put in the $250 that I do each time it wins, but I ask you to participate. Why? Because it's the right thing to do. Why? Because it creates positive karma. And you and I both know in this thing we do called gambling, we can never have enough positive karma. Again, I give you the play for free. And if it wins, I then ask you to make a contribution. It's done on the honor system, guys. And again, over the past 4.5 years, this community of caregivers has contributed well over $350,000. So, it's usually on Tuesday or Wednesday on the site. Check it out. You'll see one of the feature plays from one of the handicappers given away for free, no strings attached. It's the Charity Play of the Week program, and I hope you become a member of one of the most important things that you'll ever come across in gambling. Nobody's ever done it. I created it, and it's definitely something that will produce some positive karma in your life and benefit others in a time of need. This second half ready to kick off with one of the worst games on the board. If you thought the Jets and the Dolphins sucked, now we're going to talk about the Saints and the San Francisco 49ers. Hey, they're going to play the game. Somebody's going to cover, somebody's not. It's a 50-50 betting proposition. I know one thing. 49ers haven't done anything since that 28-0 Monday night season opening win. There's no way they're getting my money in this contest. So if I had to bet it, Steve, I'm laying it with the Saints, who are coming off the home upset of Seattle.
Oh, look, Al, the 49ers, they're so bad. I mean, they should all just take a freaking knee. And not during the anthem. In general, they suck. Chip Kelly, he's about as popular in California as Biggie Smalls right after Tupac's murder. And it was his bright idea to bring Colin Kaepernick, who flat out stunk up the joint. Great call, coach. San Francisco D, they've allowed 100 yards rushing for the last 6 games. Al, I always say it every week on the show. I don't like Breeze away from the Dome. I don't like the Saints away from home. But I can't help but give the edge to the Saints here. Give me the Saints minus the field goal on the road.
Well, I thought the Saints did something very interesting last week against Seattle. They took advantage of a Seattle team that was exhausted defensively, missing a couple of key starters with Bennett and Chancellor out. They had played that 6-6 overtime tie at Arizona the Sunday prior, where the defense was on the field for 46 minutes in that game. So Sean Payton came out and decided, hey, we're going to run the ball. And it's not something they do exceptionally well, but they had a pass-run split, 25 passes, 25 runs. And consequently, their time of possession in that game was 36 minutes. They ran for 123 yards, which for the Saints is a hell of a lot of production on the ground. And Tim Hightower had a season-high 102 yards. I've got to think Sean Payton is bright enough to realize and look at those San Francisco stats that you've got a San Francisco team, as you said, dead last in the league at stopping the run, 185.1 yards a game, 5.1 yards per carry. This is a team that a couple of weeks ago, the Buffalo Bills and LaShawn McCoy, they ran for 312 yards against this San Francisco defense. And saying they had a defense is almost an insulting thing to say about any team in the NFL because they have no defense. So I think New Orleans will come out. They're going to pound the ball against them, and that's going to soften them up for the Saints then to hit them through the air with Breeze. Cheap price. New Orleans is going to be the play here. I'm with you. Green Bay and Indianapolis, the Packers got into a slugfest with Atlanta, managed to get the cover, losing in the final seconds of that game to a Matt Ryan touchdown pass. But it was an alarming game when I looked at the box score because, Aaron Rodgers had a great game statistically. 28 for 38, 246 yards, 4 touchdowns. He was also their leading rusher, 6 carries, 60 yards. Well, do the math. The team only had 331 total yards. He passed for 246. He ran for 60. When you subtract the sacks, etc., he accounted for about 90% of their total yards. That's how bad injuries have affected this Green Bay team. They had 6 starters out for the game against Atlanta. Now, the Colts were dreadful at home against Kansas City, but now we're asking the Packers to put up a lot of points against a Colts team that gives up a lot of points on the road, but any given day, Andrew Luck can put points on the board. Is 7.5 too big of a number to ask Green Bay to cover here?
Right. So what I say here is what we tell gamblers, Al, all the time, and we've been telling it to them for years. Sometimes you just can't be scared of the obvious. Short and sweet, Luck versus Rodgers. Should be a high-scoring game, right? That's why it's a 54-point total that we see on the board there. So let's not let the bookies scare us off of this over. Trust me, that's exactly what they're trying to do here. Green Bay, we know they lost their running backs, so we know they'll be throwing the ball all game long. That should set up, Al, that up and down over type of atmosphere. And then Luck will have no choice but to start airing it out. So Indy's gone over the total 7 of the last 9 times. Let's make it 8 out of 10. Just take the easy way out here and go over the total.
We do not talk about these games before we start this show. So I have no idea where you're going with these games either. So I threw you that softball purposely to see if you were thinking the same way I was. And I am with you 100%. I would never touch this game sideways because I don't know how you would pick a side. But clearly,
no, it's a good line.
Exactly. You're looking at the obvious play here is the over because neither one of these teams can run the ball, which means you've got plenty of extra time on the clock. 2 quarterbacks that have no problem throwing the ball 40 times if they have to. And not only are the Packers going over, but listen, the Colts have gone over in 10 of their last 13. And again, they have shown you that they can't play any defense. So if you're going to play it, go with the over in this one. And by the way, Steve, just want to point out one more thing. A lot of guys in that situation where they can't decide the side, they try to outsmart the line makers.
Right.
And they go and play a teaser. Oh, hey, we'll take a 2-team 6-point teaser. We'll take Green Bay down or we'll take Indianapolis plus the points. And they missed the obvious play, which we think in this case is the over. Never understood that because they're doubling the chances of winning against themselves because suddenly now, even though they're manipulating the line by 6 points, they've got to win the side and the total if they're playing it on the same game.
Love teasers, so true.
Love teasers, but I just don't understand that philosophy.
No, it's so true. It's so true. I'm sorry to cut you off, but it's so true. I mean, Al, we tell customers all the time as well that that's why you can't bet every game on the board because sometimes the lines are going to be right. Now, we know the customers, the gamblers, the bettors, they make the line. It's public perception, and they're wrong more than they're right. But as a gambler, you're better off looking for that one game on the board where you feel the line is off. Like you always taught me, it jumps off the page and says, bet me, bet me, bet me. That's your line, and it's true. That's why I repeated it. And a lot of times, on the show here, we talk about every important game on the board. But as gamblers, we wouldn't just bet on every game. We're going to find one game and surround and pound.
Gotcha. Next game is not that game to bet me, bet me, bet me. San Diego, a 5-point favorite at home against Tennessee. Titans coming off a 2-1 homestand. Should have been 3-0, but they coughed up a late lead against Indianapolis. Then they hammered Jacksonville in that Thursday night game. Titans, 494 yards against the Jaguars, but Hey, it was Jacksonville. San Diego had their brief 2-game winning streak snap when they went to Denver and fell short against the Broncos. Chargers, not a very good team as a favorite. Great as an underdog. Poor team as a favorite. 5-10 against the spread, their last 15 laying points. Tough price in this one. I can see Tennessee trying, obviously, to run the ball with DeMarco Murray and Derrick Henry to keep this close. Marcus Mariota plays much better on the road than he does at home. I do question the efficiency and the effectiveness of this Tennessee defense, however. Philip Rivers could carve them up. This is another tough game as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, this is what you call the gun to the head pick, where the only way you'd pick a side here is if you had a gun to your head. Philip Rivers, horrible week last week versus the Denver defense. He threw 3 picks in Denver, but one thing I can promise you, Al, is that he's not going to face the Broncos defense this week. It's just the Tennessee Titans, and he should be able to roll all over them. It's true. Chargers like to play teams close, like butter plays toast. 4 games decided by 4 points or less thus far. San Diego, we know, they also don't play well as the favorite. Only 5-10 last 15 when laying points. But this is the perfect spot for this Charger team at home. I think it should be a double-digit win for San Diego. If they ever had a chance to do it, this should be it. I don't really know what's going to happen, but that's the way I'd go if you had a gun to my head. Chargers minus the wood.
Okay, this is a stay-away game for me. I really don't have an opinion, which is okay to say as a handicapper when you have so many games on the board. Final game we're going to take a look at is Oakland -1 at Denver. Oakland's at home. That's the problem. Raiders on the road. Hey, they are the ultimate road warriors. 5-0 straight up and against the spread this season. At home during Jack Del Rio's tenure, that is the issue. 2-9 straight up and against the spread. They're coming off a game at Tampa in which Derek Carr was only 40 for 59 for a franchise record 513 yards. Really something when you consider all the great quarterbacks the Raiders have had. He set the franchise record for yards in a game, 4 touchdowns. Raiders, 626 yards, total yards in that game against the Buccaneers, 270 for Tampa. They had 44 minutes time of possession, but they needed overtime to win that game because they had an NFL record 23 penalties. They cost them 200 yards in infractions. They continually shoot themselves in the foot because they are such an undisciplined team. Taking on the Broncos, who, of course, in their last road game, played lousy, only had 300 total yards and lost at San Diego. But this has been a series that the Broncos have owned, especially in Oakland, and they've always been great on the AFC West road.
Yeah, and just watching football your whole life, Al, you look at a game, it says Oakland versus Denver, and knowing nothing, you're going to bet Denver 9 out of 10 times. And sometimes that's a problem with gamblers. But in this case, I don't think it is. I think the obvious is blatantly obvious. Raiders, they're coming off a huge game in Tampa. Derek Carr lit it up, team record 513 yards. He scored 4 touchdowns. He could do no wrong. But now he's going to face a Denver defense that's among the best in the league, and a Bronco team that you said won and covered 5 straight at Oakland. They're 14-2 against the spread last 16 versus the AFC West on the road. The Raiders have won 2 in a row in Florida, but they're only 2-9 versus the spread at home again, under Jack Del Rio. I think that trend continues here. Give me Denver here, Al. The dog barks in Oakland. Broncos get the money.
I'll tell you what, I can go either way on this particular game. I wouldn't be surprised if the Raiders take this game. I just have a feeling that maybe they can actually win this game and outscore the Broncos. I'm looking at this total at 43.5. When you are a Raiders team that's number 28 against the run, when you're number 27 against the pass, the Broncos are going to get their points. But I think the Raiders are going to get theirs as well. So I'm looking at that low price on that total of 43.5. I lean a little toward Oakland. I wouldn't be surprised if it edges over. I mean, I could see this one going that direction, maybe a 24-23 game. It's a tough game. I think it's going to be.
I just feel like Denver needs it, Al. I feel like Denver needs this one. You know, Oakland, they can survive a loss. Denver really needs a win.
Yeah, but you know, with Anderson out and Trevor Siemian is Trevor Siemian. That's all I'll say. I mean, you know, they won the 2 straight home games against the Chargers and the Texans. They certainly were not impressive at either. And I go back again to their last road game. They were really bad in that loss against San Diego. Well, guys, that'll do it for this week's edition of the Countdown to Kickoff show. For Steve Budin, I'm Al DeMarco, and we'll catch you next week. Good luck this weekend and make some money gambling.